Can't click on it. Okay, so welcome everyone to the forum tonight. I'm hoping we'll get a few more folks here, as people can join as we go along. I want to just offer a few notes ahead to make your experience better. Everybody will be muted, with the exception of myself, Eric, and ReNae. We're going to get to as many topics as we're able. To suggest a topic, what we'd like you to do is chat your topic to everyone, and then if we have more topics than we can cover tonight, then we'll follow up with a community post in the concerned group to address your answers. If you turn on the gallery view, which should be the default in your upper right hand corner of the screen, then you're going to see the speakers as they talk. That'll probably be a better, more helpful view when more people join. And finally, this meeting is being recorded and we will post a replay. So with that said, I'm going to just ask for people who are not familiar with us as candidates, just a real brief high-level overview. ReNae, if you want to go ahead and start with that, that'd be great.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry, this is it seems my video stuff is intermittent. With some of these programs, I get a video, and with some of them, I don't, so I apologize. I just will start out by saying that I did previously serve on 281's board. I left that board in 2001 after a 5-year term. Budgets were balanced. We had a new superintendent. After that, I did serve for 8 years as Crystal Mayor. And so I have a 13-year history of working with balancing budgets, working to create stable taxes, improving services, and providing proof of a healthy budget. It's very important. To me, this election is about the money. The incumbents have failed to protect the money and the community trust, spending us into deficit and pitting programs and people against one another to compete for scarce resources. I can balance that budget, and I can also restore community trust. My track record is proven. Thank you.
Thanks, ReNae. Eric, would you like to go next?
Yeah, my name's Eric Pone. I'm a married dad of 8 kids, 6 of whom have graduated or are currently attending district schools. I live in Brooklyn Park, where my parents have made their home for over 30 years, and I'm currently chair of the Brooklyn Park Budget Advisory Commission and have 28 years of financial services experience. I also serve as volunteer staff at Brunswick United Methodist Church in the capacities of youth and children's ministry. For me, the biggest thing right now is just helping to get the district budget under control. If we can get the district budget under control, we can create opportunities for other issues that are facing our district. For example, equity. It's hard to face equity if you don't have the money to establish the programs. It's hard to make sure that we have adequate janitors and food staff hired if we don't have the money to do it. And it's hard to maintain our awesome teaching base, all of our great principals and other administrators, if we don't have the money to pay them. So my main focus right now is to do 2 things. One is to establish a balanced scorecard that, developed with the board, will allow us to determine what the goals of the district are and report out to you guys in the community whether or not we're meeting those goals or not. The second thing is to make sure that we're regularly communicating with all of you out in the public, because too often it seems that we haven't been communicating very well out there with you guys. And in order for us to really achieve our goals as a district, we have to communicate with the public. We have to communicate with you guys on a regular basis. And one of my big pushes on the board in the next year will be to increase that, make sure that you're seeing the results, make sure that those results are put into plain English so that all of you we can all win together. More importantly, our kids can win together.
Thanks, Eric. So I want to say that I think this is a really fun forum. It's very casual, and we get to just talk with the community. And even after the election, I would love to see this continue, because we have nearly 3,000 members in this group. We definitely want to stay in touch and connected with you. And if you like this format, if we get good feedback about it, we'll keep it going. Maybe half an hour is too much or is too little. Maybe 45 minutes is the right amount. But if we don't, as I said, get to your questions, we can do this again, because it's so easy for us to just pop in and spend a little time with the community. So I'm Stacy Ryder. I'm running with Eric and ReNae as part of Change 281, which is our sort of collective platform. And we're very focused on the financial health of the district. I myself am an MBA. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies as a consultant for the last 20 years of my career. I don't come at this from an educational perspective. I come at this from a parent perspective of two kids raised in the district, and as a taxpayer, a concerned citizen. And so I definitely want to see that the board is communicative with the community and also good financial stewards of our tax dollars. And so with that said, let's go ahead and jump in. We've got a topic. And we'll just sort of round robin this. How safe do you think it is for students to return to the classrooms? What needs to be done to make it safe?
I
Eric?
can go first if that's okay,
Oh,
because I was literally just in a building this afternoon. I was at Meadow Lake Elementary, taking care of some business for one of my kids, and the schools are doing an excellent job of preparing. They've got plexiglass shields that they're going to be putting up for the teachers. There's a lot of stickers on the floor. I mean, you go into a grocery store, you think that there's a lot of stickers. There's a ton of stickers telling kids where to stand, where they can't stand. They've got signs on the doors letting folks know if a room has been cleaned and sanitized or whether it has been used. And so I think that those are critical, kind of first steps. In order to maintain that, though, we need to ensure that we're hiring enough janitorial staff to do ongoing maintenance as we go through the school year. Otherwise, people will get sick, teacher will get sick, kids will get sick, and we'll be right back at home in distance learning again.
yeah, I mean, we've already heard before we're even back at school, right, that some of our high school sports athletes are falling sick as our coaches, and that's before we even get lots of kids, back in the classrooms. And so I definitely agree. We've lost like 20 janitorial staff over the last couple of years, maybe more than that. And so ReNae, as you react to that question, what thoughts come up for you? What needs to be done to make it safe?
Well, to me, there has to be a number of things. Like, it would be really nice to see the administration and the school board respond to questions by parents in a way that's concrete. I would love to be able to see the plans. I don't know why those are a secret. I have some concerns because as you start to look at what other districts are doing and you start to speak with other people, I have grandkids in the Centennial District. It was a check-off list. I mean, each kid was issued 2 face masks. Each kid had the plexiglass, not the plexiglass, but the filmed curtain, the safe film curtained around their desk. They were assured that those kids were not going to be leaving the desks. They were eating at the desk. I mean, I'm one of those people that's really a very fine point process person. And even though I grew up here, was born and raised here in Minnesota, there's a Missouri side of me that says, show me, please show me. And part of the reasons why I want to see it is because of the lack of trust that has grown and has sort of been exhibited by folks. So, in all reality, I think that the current spiking of numbers is probably going to affect us much more at this point than some of the stuff we do in the classroom. I think we have to take a real wait and see approach. They may be out of school again for all we know after listening to the governor today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely apparent, especially in our district. So, we're getting sort of measured against Hennepin County as a whole, but in our part of the district, in our school district, we are on the rise to a point where, you know, our reopening plans for November for the elementary school kids may be at risk. And I think
Yeah.
that student and staff safety absolutely has to come first. And we cannot be putting our kids back in harm's way, especially when we know that they may be going home to a grandparent watching them after school, or you know, other caregivers or other family members. We really need to make sure that we have a handle on it. And you know, as you said, ReNae, the district plans are pretty high level right now, and I think we'd all feel a lot better if we had more concrete plans like I've seen out of Minnetonka's
Well,
school.
excuse me, I don't even know if they're very high level plans at this point. They're, to even use the term plan, it all just seems like a rumor at this point.
Yeah.
Well, the district is required to report those plans to the state and to the county. Now, that being said, where they are failing miserably is reporting that to the public. It's just not getting done.
I
There's not enough
agree.
communication coming from the district themselves, not from the principals. The principals are doing their best they can to communicate with what they know, but from the actual principals themselves. I didn't even know about the November go date until I overheard it on one of my kids' Zoom calls, and I'm like, whoa, okay, that was new. And then you kind of rush back through old school board meetings, you go through, and it's just not a consistent deal. There needs to be a set communication plan that is consistent across the district, where it's like, on this day, we send out the information. You know,
Yeah.
it happened kind of, we've gone from like 14.1 to now we're at like 21 cases. I don't want to say per 50,000. It's a significant shift, and we need to know in the next 2 weeks how that's going to impact the kids so that we can prepare.
Right. So let's move on to a different topic so we can make sure we get through a few of these tonight. So we hear a lot about the district's financial troubles, but how are we doing with educating the students? Right. That's what we're all really here for, is educating the students. And so, what's the feedback that you guys have been getting from parents? How do you feel like we're doing within the district? We all interact with different families from different schools at different grade levels. Um, I'll start with this one. I feel like my son's a junior at Armstrong, and I feel like he's doing great. You know, he definitely misses his peers, but in terms of academics, I think that they've done a really good job. Moving to the block system has been a real benefit over what we experienced last spring, and it's definitely been helpful in terms of kids getting more face time with their teachers. That said, I feel like I've reached out to teachers a number of times trying to get some feedback from, you know, like my son's missing an assignment. He says it's in, it's, you know, like that kind of stuff. And I feel like they're under a lot of pressure. And so just that sort of back and forth communication piece of it between parents and the educators has been a little strained for me personally. But otherwise, I haven't heard a lot of complaints. I feel like, you know, everybody's doing the best they can, and it's been wildly more successful than it was in the spring. ReNae, what are you hearing?
You know, I'm hearing more of the concerns than about the quality of education in the classroom, which is not unusual. You know, we are known in this district. Our teachers are incredibly dedicated. They work long and hard. And so, you know, that has not been the concern from parents that I've heard. You know, it's the lack of communication, the not knowing what's going on, the state of uncertainty that seems to be the topic du jour.
Eric, what are parents telling you?
You know, I've talked with both parents, and more importantly, I've tried to regularly communicate with teachers. From a teaching standpoint, they're fairly confident in where they're at from the standpoint of technology, and you can see it in their Zoom calls. They look a lot more confident this year. They look very, very well prepared. They don't have that kind of shell shock, what's going on kind of approach that we saw in the spring. I think all workers were providing in spring. It's really starting to feel like over the Zoom calls, there is a sense of this is a classroom. These are our classroom norms. Kids are laughing. They're talking to each other between Zoom calls.
Mm-hmm.
That is a massive improvement over there. Now, that being said, what I've heard from parents is the concept of being able to access recorded classrooms. I know they're recording some of these meets, but there's really not an idea as to by grade level where to pick up the recorded call. So in case a kid misses it, they're not missing the class session. They can actually pick up the class session. The second thing that I've heard from teachers is just they still haven't received a lot of technology. So some of the teachers need second screens. Some of them need better headphones. One of the big things I heard from one of the teachers is that they had to go out and buy all of their kids headphones with microphones because she couldn't hear them. That is a sacrificial purchase that a teacher should not have to make.
Yeah, okay.
That should just happen. That those headphones should have just gone out with the equipment to be able to listen and hear. It's very important, and that shouldn't be coming out of the teacher's pocket. So quality, I feel, is up, as what I'm hearing. Teacher engagement's up. Equipment is still an issue out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing right now, for me, from my standpoint, is the engagement. And I look at my daughter, who is disabled. She's been very disengaged. But my son, this has been awesome. Distance learning seems to fit him to a T. Mm-hmm. But for my daughter, she really needs to be in a classroom. And there are a lot of kids right now that need to be in a classroom. We've got to figure out a way on how to safely get them there.
And I just want to add one more thing when it's appropriate.
Go ahead.
Okay. The only other two things that I really worry about is and I've heard from special ed parents that are extremely frustrated and very concerned. And, you know, the kids that do well, they do well. Bless those kids. We're grateful for those kids, you know. But the kids that need a couple extra boxes to stand on, as you always say, Eric, to improve equity, I have some concerns about that. I have concerns about our special ed kids. And then I also have concerns because I've talked to some language immersion parents, some Spanish immersion parents. And, you know, if you're not speaking that language every single day, you're falling backwards. So there are some kids that I really, really worry about in the district. So
another thing that I wanted to add quickly is, you know, the idea of opting out of in classroom and going to distance learning. Some parents are quite worried that they're going to lose the teachers that they've already been working with if they take that option. That their kids will lose their teachers in the classrooms that they've been in. So that is causing a lot of hand-wringing among students and parents because, you know, as you said, they've developed this cohort now. They work together, they know what they're doing, and the idea that they would then be, you know, transferred to a different teacher if they took that option is I think very concerning from some of our parents. But let's
one quick other thing here. If you're a special education parent, what I will recommend is that you reach out to your special education teachers. There are occupational therapists and speech therapists, and some of the special ed teachers on an exception basis are bringing kids in one. So they'll bring one kid in, is behind plexiglass, and they're working with them. They know that there are special ed kids out there that are really, really struggling and need to come in. If you're having technology issues, reach out to your local school. You can bring the technology in. They have people there to help you. So there is systems out there. There are people out there to help you. If your kid desperately needs it, you can get them into a building. But as parents, we have to reach out and say, hey, this is what I need, to the teachers and to staff. And they will accommodate. They've been very, very gracious in accommodating my children this year.
That's awesome to hear. And I think, as candidates, we would work to just put a bow on this one before we move on. I think as candidates, if we're seated on the board together, reviewing and updating the equity policy, and then working with the administration to make sure that not only that it's enforced, but we have key metrics that we are measuring the administration against and publishing those out to the community is something that we are all, as three of us, very aligned as a must-have as we move forward, because we can publish an equity policy, we can talk about it, we can say it's very important to us, but until we are measuring and improving on it and showing the community what we're doing with that equity policy, it's sort of lip service at this point. So we're, all three of us, I think I can speak for, saying we're very committed to making sure that the equity policy is updated and enforced across the district. But Stuart, I'm going to skip over you for just a second. We'll come back to that because we're all very proud of our SEIU endorsement, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to get to Aileen's question, and she said, how protective will you be for the arts programming for both performing and visual in our schools when you are seated on the school board? Which is a great question, right? Because it really breaks to the heart of the financial condition of this district. So Eric, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, I mean, arts is part of a fundamental education. It's critical. And the great thing about arts is you can interweave arts throughout language training, throughout mathematics, throughout science. It complements education. I have a substantial arts background. I was a high school debater when I was in high school, very proud lettered. And so I've had the privilege of working with students as a debate coach, as a debate judge. And so thinking about the arts is incredible. It's an expansive area. It's easy to implement into the curriculum. And it's something that, from my standpoint, I will continue to fight for on board. Our goal should be a basic fundamental education for every child, and art should be at the center of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would build off of what you said, Eric. And my son, my older son, is a musical theater artist, and my younger son is in the choir. I'm on the choir booster executive committee at Armstrong, so I'm very engaged in the arts and have been since my kids were very little. And one of the things that I think our schools are set up to do is turn out little robot workers, right? They're all very, very left brain, and they got their 3 R's and they're ready to go, right? But we're not raising workers, we're raising humans, and humans need art in their lives, and they need to be able to produce art in their lives. And that is like a balance that I feel that the first thing to go is always arts programs. And that's just certainly something I've seen with this district. But to me, I don't know how we raise complete humans without centering arts in their world. And that's art is expression, right? It gives you the other side of those 3 R's. And what I would hope is that when we're able to sort of right the ship with the financial program, that we continue to expand the arts program. And I found out not very long ago, last year, we pay coaches for their extra time. And when teachers coach, we give all sorts of extra money to our athletics programs, but our choir coaches weren't getting, or choir directors were not getting extra compensation for directing like chamber choirs and things like that. So it was very unbalanced. Our orchestra group wasn't getting extra compensation for their travel programs and things like that. They work really hard to ensure that our students have a top-notch experience. And so I feel like it's fair to compensate them the way we would any other coach or any other person who's putting in extra effort outside of the classroom. ReNae, do you have another thing to add to that topic, or should we
You
move
know,
on?
just that, there's nothing new I can add. I support it 100%. And I also come from a perspective of having lived through this school district when arts was as important as the reading and writing and arithmetic aspect of it. And the number of nationally known artists that have come out of this school district is pretty phenomenal. So I think we can recapture that.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see, Lisa asks, do we have enough teachers, an adequate number of substitute teachers, EAs, and other staff? I would just start with no. I mean, straight out of the gate, because we have so many teachers that have chosen not to return or taken a leave of absence this year with COVID. That's just my first reaction. ReNae, what do you think about that?
Well, it's kind of a shot in the dark to say yes or no, but part of my 5-part plan, one part of it is to conduct a confidential employee survey, which I think is really important to figure out their working environment and what we can do to prevent 30% turnovers of teachers and what we can do to prevent loss of staff within this district. Because when you lose staff in any area, you end up, it costs you a lot more. The other thing that I really want to be able to get done, this is the real super nerd stuff of me and my corporate background, but I think that it's important that we conduct a staffing audit and an organizational chart review and look at job descriptions and look at making sure, I've heard rumors about things within the way they conduct day-to-day business. And I want to make sure that our staff, the people that we hire, we know what they're doing, we know where they're at, we can demonstrate the outcome for the work that they do and make it a great place for them to be employed.
Yeah. Thank you, ReNae. Eric, do you have anything?
Can you repeat the question one more time? You guys dropped out for just a second there.
Yeah, the question is, do we have enough teachers, an adequate number of substitute teachers, EAs, and other staff? And we already covered the custodial staff, right? So we've
already covered, we know where we're coming from that standpoint. The answer I would give is depends. Right now, based on what we know, a third of the staff, when they last did the survey, indicated that they wouldn't feel comfortable coming back if that involved coming back full time. If that plays out even to just 15%, half of that number, we don't have the ability to replace those numbers easily. There is a statewide shortage of teachers. We have a lot of teachers that are opting to retire versus even having to deal with the technology. And so it will be a challenge when we go back to the classrooms unless there is a vaccine that that's going to protect them. You have to remember, folks, is that a lot of our teachers, particularly at the middle and high school level, are in the COVID risk categories. So these are going to be our older workers. In many cases, they have underlying health issues. They may be taking care of their parents and stuff at home. And so they have to weigh that deal. Do I take the risk and go to work, or do I take early retirement? So the answer is depends on safety. It depends on the availability of a vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, I think just from an EA perspective, we could definitely use more EAs across the board. That's just my personal opinion. I have spent a lot of time volunteering in the classroom because in elementary school, because they only got an EA for maybe an hour a day, right? But the kids are there for a lot longer than that. So I was a very frequent visitor over to RSI where my kids went to school to spend time in the classroom and help the teacher as just a volunteer, which is great when we get parent volunteers, but that can't be the expectation, right? That's just not the world that we live in. So we're at time, but I feel like I could keep going if you guys want to keep going for a few more questions, if that's okay. If people need to drop, please do. But I think this is a really engaging discussion. So the next one is an interesting one, which is, do you think systemic racism exists in 281? And if so, how do we combat it? And I'm going to go with yes on that one. And I'll give you a very specific example of a young man that I know that graduated, and this came from him. He graduated a few years ago, and we happened to be chatting about this topic, and he told me that he never really noticed it until one day when he was walking in to school. Like, he would show up at school a few minutes late, and he knew the guy behind the desk, and so the guy would always just wave him through, and he'd run off to his class, right? And then one day he noticed that he was waved through when other kids of color were there having to get their tardy slips before they could go to class. And he said that one day it just like occurred to him, and he started looking around and understanding like all the different ways that our kids of color in our school were being treated differently in the classroom, in the hallways, in the disciplinary ways that, you know, kids would be called out for being rowdy in the classroom or sent, you know, to the principal's office or whatever to go be dealt with or removed from the classroom, where, you know, he saw other kids doing the same or worse and not experiencing those consequences. So, you know, I've heard multiple examples of this since I've been running for school board, and I think it's a real issue that needs to be addressed through bias training and through empathy training with other students. Eric, you look like you want to say something.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've written pretty extensively on the kind of like what drives this. You know, a large chunk of what's driven this, particularly in Minnesota, which ranks 49th. We rank worse than Mississippi in students of color achievement versus their white peers. And a large chunk of that is based in the historical redlining of the Twin Cities, where families of color were restricted to specific neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods were under-resourced. And the thing is, racism and racial justice is never going to be solved per se until Black interests and white interests are treated equally. Too often, you'll see white interests will get the priority. And again, it may be because of, you know, louder voices, ability to donate time, money, resources. Could be any number one of those things. But the thing is, you'll see that reflected in the types of programs that are out there that will benefit higher income, wealthy white families, but children of color and their families don't have access easily to those programs because they're not prepared for it. They don't have the extra money to put towards the resources to make them competitive within those programs. And you have to remember too is that there's a huge gap in housing. Yeah. Whereas 70% of white families own their homes, 73% of families of color rent. And right. When you rent, you are living in an unstable world where one year you could be in 281, next year you could be in Minneapolis, 2 years after that you could be in St. Paul. And so you don't have that stability. And we've never ever addressed the underlying economics so that folks have stable homes. Right. You have stable families and stable homes. You produce better students than when you have nomadic families wandering right. around every few years, and the kids are exposed to different methodologies and they never get to settle in. So that's where I'm at.
What can we do, ReNae, what can we do about that as school board members? What would be your approach to sort of root out the systemic racism? What do you think, you know, as school board members, we could work together to try and work with the administration to implement?
Well, you know, sometimes the expectations are all the same, but the realities are different. Like, I was talking to someone who was an aide in a building, and they talked about many times after school programming is not available to some of the kids because they need to have jobs to help with their families. It's the economic piece of it along with the housing piece of it, or maybe they want to be involved in an after school sports, but there's no other transportation within the family. So sometimes it's just the economic constraints, which we know are by society, sort of racially motivated constraints, but these kids all have individual needs. And I think trying to figure out what those needs are in order to help them overcome the obstacles that they have in their life. The other side of it, it's kind of interesting as we have these discussions, because I was 11 when they signed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act in the 60s, and I was politically active as a kid. And it was really interesting to see that where we were then and where we are today are kind of the identical point, where you had a lot of white people wondering, you mean I'm racist? Or, the various things that can go through, and then as you talked about bias training and empathy training, back then we called it sensitivity training. And, in a hindsight sort of a sense, there's a part of me that says, how did we slide back to the beginning? So since I kind of have that view, it's like, what can we do to truly affect ongoing systemic changes that can hold in a storm, that you don't end up sliding backwards. So I'm interested also in looking at that.
Yeah, I'm really interested in evaluating, like working with the administration to evaluate the curriculum that we're teaching in school. I managed to go my entire life until about 5 years ago without knowing what Juneteenth was. And I've lived in Minneapolis for 20 years. And that to me is just unacceptable. Like we need to teach our Indigenous history. We need to teach our Black history. We need to teach it. And that is something that I think, we've outsourced the curriculum development to folks who are more interested in sort of erasing that history. And I think that not just our school district, but all school districts need to make a really concerted effort to make sure that that we're teaching our history and not just part of our history.
But can I be so bold as to assert, though, that to me is not what is needed to reduce the gap. Really what's needed is to get the basics done. Reading, writing, processing, both in a mathematical as well as through computer science, just basic core education. And I think sometimes we get caught up in things like IB and AP, and those are geared towards specific types of students. What we need to be thinking about is, what does that middle 80% need to be good, productive folks out there in the world? And then we have to simplify and deliver those fundamentals at world class. In many ways, the social studies, that's coming. Those are changing.
Civics.
But what every kid will need, regardless of race, is the ability to calculate, the ability to read, the ability to write, and the ability to understand the basic science of the world. And we're living as adults with adults right now that do not have that, particularly the science background, or they're discounting that education. And now you've got people wandering around getting sick, and some people are dying because of it.
Yeah.
That is poor education, not delivered systemically across the group. So we begin first by just doing the basics right. If we can narrow the basics gap, we can begin to work on the other things.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so we have another topic, and this is a good one. I think we will all have a really interesting opinion on this. So where do we go with our magnet schools? Expand or make other adaptations? Adaption, I think it was meant to be. adaptations. So do we continue to create more magnet schools, or do we bring our programs from our magnet schools into the other schools? So, we're creating more of that access to those magnet qualities.
I think the first thing you do is you consolidate the programs. We have too many programs that we can't afford. I want all of these programs in a great university style district. There should be tons of different magnet programs. The actual results of the tests and the graduation rates seem to show, though, that we have too many programs that are benefiting too few kids. So my attitude is we pick the best of the magnet programs, we consolidate them to a few buildings in the center of the district, make them pre-K to 12 programs, and then for the rest of the district, we focus on fundamental education. So that where you have areas in the district of high poverty, high traffic, families are moving back and forth all the time, during the time that they're in residence in our district, they're getting a solid fundamental education. If they can do that, even if it's just if they're only there for 2 or 3 years, that can provide a foundation for that child moving on to the next district that they can carry with them.
Mm-hmm.
If we get too specialized, like for example, you'll have a fine arts school, you can have a STEM school, you can have an IB school, you can have an AP school. Too often, those are very narrow interests that only benefit the top 20% of the kids. Those kids are going to be okay regardless. We narrow the programs, we centralize them in the district, and we focus on the core education. As we get that right, you will have more kids who are academically ready for the rigors of the more intense magnet programs. And we'll be able to expand because we'll have the student base to expand them with. Mm-hmm. And parents will demand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. ReNae, what's your thought on this?
A couple of different things. Number one, first of all, I agree with you, Eric. I think you're spot on that. And I know I sound like a broken record in this case, but the next 2 to 4 years are going to be really, really difficult financially in this school district. And, unless we can turn that boat around, there's not going to be any money for anything, extra or special or bringing people up or any of the other. We won't even be able to do the basic fundamentals that you talk about, Eric. And that's something that we talk about all the time. But on top of, so let's say we have all the money in the world and now I get to daydream about my school district. On top of that, the magnet schools, I think we're being too limiting, and what can we do to expand vocational education, and what can we do to expand more apprentice programs, more hands-on working, to make, more hands-on, to make the education really, really relevant for the kids. I think that there are a lot of different ways in which we can deliver skills and education that can carry them into adulthood that are beyond just magnet schools.
And two of the most underutilized resources in our community are Hennepin Tech and North Hennepin Community College. North Hennepin Community College, from a post-secondary option, could provide so much more in the way of higher level classes for our gifted students who are really geared towards wanting to focus on their math or their science, or just want to get a go on getting their education or their college going. Hennepin Tech, it provides a ton of employment-ready programs. And if a kid going into their sophomore or junior year makes adequate use of either one of those phenomenal institutions, of which I am a graduate of one, you can leave high school with a high school diploma and an AA or a technical certificate. That kid is now employment ready to get out there and make a big dent in our community. And too few kids are able to take advantage of it. I think a lot of kids know about it, and that's sad.
And let me add on that. I think one of the other things that I've really learned also is that we can have a much better working relationship with unions, because the unions have their own schools and the unions pay for your college education. So if you opt to not go to North Hennepin or to the VOTEC school, I have a son-in-law that is a sheet metal worker with 5 years of college under his belt, and he supports a family of, you know, a wife and 3 kids, and his college was all paid for. And so those are the opportunities that our kids out there aren't learning about for whatever reason. So.
And that's so, you are so right, ReNae, on that. In the middle of our district, we've got the electrical workers just opened a brand new state-of-the-art facility. The pipe fitters just remodeled their state-of-the-art facility. We are an education hub in the Twin Cities that, frankly, is utilized by everybody except our kids, and that needs to change.
Exactly. Sorry, I get excited about out of the box thinking.
Well, I have a slightly different approach because my sons did go to RSI, which is considered a magnet school in this district, and you know, without that immersion experience, I don't know that they would be fluent Spanish speakers. But and we've taken them all over the place. We've gone to Costa Rica and Spain and Mexico just so they can, you know, practice, right? But I do think language is an art. And if we take the learnings that we have from Spanish immersion and we bring that language opportunity, it's that right side development. It's just like music. Learning a language is just like learning music. Music is a language. And so being able to offer kids that type of curriculum, you know, even if it's just one block a week or something like that, I think that is a way for us to effectively provide more opportunity to, and we have a lot of kids in this district that speak Spanish at home. And so being able to have a Spanish class in all of our elementary schools, it helps them with their fundamental development of that language that they are at home, right?
Absolutely.
And
it helps with grammar immensely to learn a foreign language. My concern is that, are we teaching the right languages in the district? Yes, we have a huge Hispanic population, but we have a huge Somali population, we have a huge Karen population, we have a huge Hmong population, we have a Chinese and Arabic population. Are we teaching the right languages, even so that the kids who are the native speakers are getting not only good English as second language training, but they're getting solid language training in their home tongue so that they're able to read and write well in their home tongues as well. That's just core education.
Yeah, and again, how we do this, I mean, we have a community service budget, right? And so how are we using that community service budget? I think that's a great question that we would be asking ourselves. And again, what's the gist behind it is equity, right? We want these kids to be able to have what they need to thrive in our district. And so that's my take on it. And my other son, one of my oldest son, is going to school for computer science. He's been accepted to the University of Toronto. We had him defer for a year because of COVID, but he built our website. And so he can't wait to get up there and get moving. Right. But he didn't have a single STEAM class all throughout elementary. It's just because of what I do and what my husband does that sparked his interest, and we brought him along, and we had to take him to Coder Dojo, and we could be working with these other community groups to bring those opportunities back into and introduce them to our kids, right? Invite those people into our district for our kids. And I feel like that's just something more that we as a district could be doing, and it doesn't cost us more because these are other nonprofit groups that we're just feeding them students.
But we have to make sure that the kids that are struggling the most are up on the basics. And so for many of our kids, just reading, doing math,
Yep.
and the core skill of writing is a daily struggle. I think back to my daughter who has struggled with that. And that if we, for us, a win is, can she read to a certain level? Can she write to a specific level? Her teacher last year was amazing. She took a child that wasn't very verbal, and now my kid can suddenly, she's having these really high level conversations with me. And those are, if we can get that down first, particularly in communities of color that have been disproportionately left behind, when we can begin those public-private partnerships, we're going to have students that are ready to take advantage of them. But we have to get the basics done first.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. And again, so you know, every kid is going to be at a different point on their educational journey, right? One thing that I heard, and this was just recently, right, is that it seems like we started the school year with a curriculum that didn't acknowledge that we really kind of bombed the last quarter, with nobody's fault, everybody's fault. Like it just was like, but the kids were really struggling. And then we started this year like that never happened, and didn't catch them up over the sort of the summer, give them the opportunity to do that, but just started off like with our normal curriculum. And some of the kids weren't necessarily ready, and so now they're having to sort of work extra hard to get caught up so that they're succeeding this year. And so I'm sensitive to that too. We're living in extraordinary times, right? So that is really a challenge for us. But as board members, what I would expect from all of us is that we would acknowledge that what happened last spring, and we would work with the community to take the right corrective actions, work with the administration to make sure that our children are feeling comfortable, that our teachers are feeling comfortable, that the kids are ready to learn what they're ready to teach. And that's something that I feel like we're just sort of dancing around the elephant in the room there. And I think we can probably start to wrap this up a little bit. I do want to get back to Stuart's question because I politely skipped over it. And so basically his question was, why do you think the RFT endorsed the incumbents and the SEIU endorsed the three of you? And so I'll tackle that one. I think the SEIU really sees the vision based on the conversations that we had of where we want to take the district. I think they're seeing their numbers, shrinking and having to do more with so very much less. And I think they're excited for the energy that we're going to bring to the board once we're seated.
And I think part of this is, when it comes to the teachers, they may not have, again, they had a small group of teachers that made that determination to go with the status quo. And that's their right to go with the status quo. Why I'm excited about the SEIU endorsement is because of that's been the one union that's been kind of bullied.
Yeah.
They had their jobs taken. They tried to outsource our food program so that the food program was no longer going to be local, but potentially outsourced. And Lord knows where the food would have been prepared. And our teachers are all over the Twin Cities. They come from all over the Twin Cities, but much of our SEIU membership is local. These are folks that live next door to you and I. These are parents in our schools. These are neighbors in our neighborhood. And so having the teachers' endorsement would have been really, really awesome. Mm-hmm. But to me personally, that SEIU endorsement was the one I wanted the most because mm-hmm. It impacted my neighbors specifically. And, laborers have a special place in my heart. I come from a family of union members. And so the importance, particularly of our engineers and our food service workers, they have a special place and will always have a special place in my heart.
Yeah. ReNae, do you have anything to add there?
You know, just that you'd have to probably go to the RFT themselves and ask them. But I also know my personal opinion is that sometimes the status quo is just the easier way to go when times are tough. But I'm with you, Eric, the SEIU, you know, it's no secret that here in my home, our blood runs blue with union. We have a lot of union members, and I know the challenge that they have faced in their job every single day. And more importantly, I know their incredible, passionate dedication to the kids in that building and the staff in that building. So to them, I say, thank you so much.
And RFT should be aware of the fact that their needs will be met. We're not going to write them off because you didn't endorse us.
Yeah.
You know, teachers are central and critical to the relationship between the student and the educational institution. And so we're going to do everything in our power to ensure that our teachers get the right equipment, the right training, and the right support to be able to do their jobs effectively. So I don't need endorsement from the teachers union to know that that's going to be my goal going forward.
Yeah, and yeah, because you know, I definitely feel that sometimes they are part of the union, but there's a very different experience that our EAs have from our teachers as well, and so we want to try and level that experience out as well, so that they're taken care of in times like COVID, when you know there may be part-time workers and that now they're not eligible for unemployment and you know other things like that. So there's definitely so much opportunity to work with our union members and make sure that they are well taken care of in this district.
Yeah, I was just going to add that if you support one union, you support them all. And it's all about the fair wages. It's all about a good work environment. It's all about being able to grieve a problem if there is one. It's about the rights that are protected by the workers. And whether you're a teacher or an SEIU member, when you're working, I know with me, you know, I'm going to be supportive of you and your union work.
So, have to protect local union jobs.
Yep.
It's absolutely critical. Those are
Yep.
some of the few jobs that are left that provide the pension, the benefits, and the and good wages that allow folks to raise families and have a good life. And every year, more of those jobs slip away, and we have to do everything in our power to keep union jobs local.
Yep, agreed.
Well, we're almost to the bottom of the hour. We went way longer than I originally anticipated, but it was a really dynamic conversation, so I didn't want it to end. I would just like to thank everybody that attended tonight and gave us questions. It was, if you guys like this format, please reach out to us and let us know, because I'd do this every night if we could. I think it's been a really great session. Eric, thanks for joining us tonight and giving us all of your insights. It's great to be part of the slate with you. ReNae, you're just such a boss. Every conversation we have, I love it. And you have such measured opinions and such great experience as a former board member. You're really speaking from a place of, you know, knowing how to get it done. And so I hope for everybody on the call, you got what you needed tonight, and please let us know how it went. If you liked it, we'll do it again. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.
See you later, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.